Today, we're going to focus on abstracts for conferences, and I am very pleased to welcome Dr. Alison Jackson, who's at the University of Cumbria, which is also where I'm based. And the rough format of this session is going to be, as we've sort of mentioned in the advert for it, it's going to be sort of a workshop type focus. This is something that is new for Alison and myself. We haven't run this abstract workshops in an online environment before, so we're interested to see how it works. So we're going to have, I'll pass over to Alison in a minute to introduce herself and give a bit of input around abstracts. But then we're going to work in 2 breakout rooms for the majority of the session, focused on some quite practical time with writing. And then we'll also come back together towards the end for a bit of a plenary and some reflections on how it's gone. So I will pass over to Alison, who can introduce herself and give us a bit of an initial input, I'm hoping, on abstracts for conferences. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hello. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Very nice to be here with you. Yes, I'm Alison Jackson from the University of Cumbria, and I'm a Doctor of Education there. I do review for BERA and have done for quite a few years, and I have also presented at BERA when I have been fortunate enough to have my papers accepted. And I've sort of seen the things change as the years have passed, as it were. So it's very nice to be with you today. I have done abstract writing days in the past, and when we, remember when we could be face to face. So as Rebecca says, this is quite different. We have a varied audience of people here, which is very good, but obviously some things perhaps will be obvious to others. And not everything that I say will be absolutely totally relevant to you. The idea, apparently, according to the blurb, was to demystify abstract. I'm not quite sure whether the demystify it. I think it likes to have a little bit of aura, of mystification around it. There's one thing I think we all have in common in this room today, and that is, I presume, we all want to succeed and have our abstracts accepted. So that is where we come together. So let's have a think about what is an abstract. I remember talking to some colleagues of mine not in higher education once, and they said, I said I was doing an abstract writing. What's that mean? What does that mean? Okay. And when I explained what it means, they said, oh, it's a summary. Yes, I suppose it is, right? It is a summary of your research or research paper, whatever it is you're going to do. But it's sort of an academic kind of summary. And that's where this demystification idea comes in, I presume, because it has some sort of mystery around it. I'm going to state some things because that I think are absolutely true. Do not cut and paste stuff from anywhere to stick into your abstract. That is so important. I'll tell you something. When you're reviewing or something like this, or when you're PhD examiner, whatever you happen to be, you can tell. It is so obvious it leaps off the page. So that is not a good idea. Don't paraphrase. Don't think, oh, this is easy. That'll do. It's fine. It's not. It might be a brilliant phrase where it came from, but it might not be where it goes to. I think this is important as well, this little phrase I found from somewhere. An abstract is an original piece of writing, and it must make sense by itself. I need to be able to read it and understand it as a unit of its own. That is also extremely important for you to realise. Your abstract allows the person reading it to get the gist quite quickly of what you're talking about. And because we're talking about the BERA conference and preparing an abstract for that, then the person reading it is going to be somebody who wants to decide whether to go to your session in BERA or not. So if you get through, that's what they want to be able to do. They want to think, oh yes, that's just what I want, and off they go to your session. So the title of this is Selling Your Research. And yes, in actual fact, the abstract is sort of an advert in some ways, because you're wanting to impress. You know, you want people to say, oh, this sounds interesting. You want to say to people, I'm good. It's really good, this. It's really interesting. Come and listen to me. You do need to sell it, but this is going to sound a bit odd, but you don't want to attract the wrong people. What I mean by that is, if you write it in a vague sort of way,
Is that weird?
you might get people popping along
Weird meowing. Let me just check on it.
to listen and watch. And when they get there, they might think, this isn't what it says in the abstract. I have been there. I was sitting in a room. I went to this thing. I thought, this sounds fantastic. And I was right in the corner and I couldn't get out of this room. And within 2 minutes, I thought, uh-oh, this is not what the abstract is about. This is not a good abstract. It has not told me. And I couldn't get out without making a complete scene. So make sure you attract the people that you want. The first person you need to impress is your reviewer. Or probably 2 reviewers for BERA, because then you get an amalgamation of 2 different ideas. So you need to attract your impress rather your reviewer. And remember your audience. Always remember your audience. Now, let's have a couple of questions from me, and I will attempt to answer them. I'm guessing at your questions. How long will it take to write the abstract? Please do not underestimate how long this will take. You remember I just said a moment ago, I used to do abstract writing days. People used to come for the whole day, nice food in the middle and all this kind of stuff. And after a very short preamble, they used to work all day on their abstract, and I would dash round each person, round and round in circles, okay? And then they used to go home and finish it, because even in the whole day, it was very difficult to finish. Now, if you're very adept at doing this already, you probably wouldn't have come to this session, but if you are, perhaps it does not take you as long. But do not underestimate how tricky it is to get a good abstract together. It is not an easy task. It needs to be concise. It needs to be very carefully crafted. It needs to sell. It needs to be an advert. It needs to say to your reader, this is worth looking at. This is worth coming to. My second question that I'm sort of guessing you might have is, okay, so what do I put in my abstract? And of course, I answer everything you need to, but let's be more precise about that. We are dealing with the BERA Conference 2024. So it is very important and seemingly obvious to read what BERA want and when they want it. I looked it up, as I've done several million times in my life before, just to double check. And I'm not going to say what I discovered. I know it's January in 2024, and I know what the criteria are, and we're going to talk about those today. But I don't want you to take my word. You need to go and you need to read what they say they want. If you don't do that, that is a vital step that you have missed. So you can't rely that Rebecca and I are telling you, and therefore you don't need to look at it. Go and look at whatever conference you are preparing for and see what they say and follow their instructions. Now, we're looking at the individual papers for BERA. That's 750 words plus 250 words allowed for reference. And there are 4 criteria: clarity, originality, rigour and significance. And those we're going to go over much more detail than my little preamble. Here's some more questions that you might ask, and I will answer them for you. 750 words. Does it matter if I don't use all those words? Yes, it does. It matters a lot. People make up these numbers, 750, for good reason. They want you to have a longish abstract. Right? So don't think, well, never mind. I've got a couple of hundred. I don't need to bother with that. I'll tell you what happens if you do that. The reviewer gets the review and it's about that on the page and they think, oh gosh, oh, I'll read it. It's no good. It's going to fail. You can tell immediately because the person writing, the applicant, has not taken the trouble to see how long the abstract should be and exploited all the word count. So yes, it does matter. You can have probably 700 and a bit. That probably would be okay, but try and use it all. 749 is quite a good number. Next question. Does it matter if I use more words on one section than another? Generally, yes, it does. There's 4 criteria. So say you thought, well, never mind, I'll use 700 words on the first criteria and I'll shove all the rest into the last 50. Not a good idea. Not a good idea, because the reviewer has marks for each of the criteria. And it's very easy to get 0 for some sections if you don't do them. The best abstracts for BERA I've ever seen show a clear progression through the 4 criteria, and they don't make the poor old reviewer have to work out which bit they're talking about. Some people actually sort of separate it into 4 paragraphs, and I think, thank you, that is so helpful. These people that do really well have realised that each criterion is marked by the reviewer and they make sure that they fully answer each of the criteria so that they get 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, and it is an excellent one. So make sure you give equal weighting to each of the 4. By the way, does the title of your abstract matter? Yes, very much so. That's the first thing that your reviewer and then your possible attendee see. That is the hook to inspire them to read the whole abstract in the first place. So your title matters a lot. Spend some time sorting it out. And the other, by the way, is the references. This came in a few years ago, probably. I don't know how many years ago, but it didn't used to be that, you know, you were given a certain word length. I think it's a good move, actually, but I'm not being patronising or trying to be rude, but please do not use references just to impress. You know, I have in my various travels through education seen this. I've got to shove a load of references in here. They're going to be so impressed by these. No. If you're going to use references, weave them into your abstract. Never just shove in. I'm using the word shove a lot here, aren't I? Put in your reference without weaving it in and making it work for you. Now, you cannot get by thinking, well, I don't know how to say this, but you know, Smith 1922 has got a brilliant thing. I'll just put his in and let you work it out, reader. No, you must make sure you weave it in and make sure your reference is there for a purpose and you explain to your reader why it is there. I thought you might be interested, and I always make notes to self when I'm reviewing for BERA, you know, and I thought you might be interesting. The very top one, I just chose one of each. People are getting a top mark. This is what I wrote to myself. This is highly interesting and well presented. I would like to go to it. Okay. A middly one. I've written, makes case for the research that's been overlooked and good for practice, but the actual research is not well enough explained. This is the British Education Research Association, research. And some people forget, they do forget to explain the research. You definitely need that as well. So that was a middle of the road, bits missed out. Vital bit missed out. And that's why they didn't get the top marks, because I obviously liked it. The next one down, sort of the lower one, I put here, the research is unclear. And listen to this one. The significance is stated rather than persuaded. You understand that? You see, there's a section that says the significance of the research. So they've just stated this is the significance. And I, as reader, reviewer, thinks, okay, you say that, but I can't see any justification at all. So you make sure you justify what you've put. And then when we get to the bottom ones, I mean, as I've said, if it's very short, it's not going to get through. It's going to be very poor. This one was interesting, though, I found, and it said, I put to myself, a little note to self, what a shame. This is really good, but it's far too short. The focus is clear and the significance is fairly well done, but the rigor of the research is lacking and the explanation of the originality of the research is not there. So half the marks have gone because of that already. So that person's paper is going down to the bottom of the list. So that's just sort of some general ideas for you from my experience of reviewing for lots of things, BERA included. And I think if you take those as your starting point, and then, as Rebecca's now going to explain to us, look extremely carefully about what these criteria are and how best you can answer each one of them to the best effect that's going to make the reviewer, like me in that top one, think, gosh, this is good. I'd like to go to this one. Rebecca, over to you.
Thank you very much. Right, now I'm feeling a bit worried because I think I wrote the blurb and put this word demystification in it. And I think this is a good example of being really careful and selective about the words, you know, in these things like abstracts where you are needing to be really precise. So I hope we are going to demystify the process. But I think, yes, I was thinking, oh, I think that's my word. Right, I think that's a really great introduction to what we're trying to do today and look at these abstracts. So what we're going to do now is I have put into the chat these 4 criteria that we're going to focus on that Alison has mentioned and that hopefully you have seen in an email from BERA this week. But if you haven't, they're there in the chat for you. So we've got clarity of the focus of the research, originality of the research, rigor of the research, and significance of the research for education, practice, policy, or theory, or maybe a combination of those. So you will want to have those visible to you for the next hour and a half. So what we're going to do is, in a minute, I'm going to ask for some help from our BERA colleagues to move us into 2 breakout rooms. And if you're not familiar with Microsoft Teams, that will happen magically for us, that you won't need to press anything or do anything. You just sit tight and you will be moved into a virtual room space with either Alison or myself. And we're then going to spend some time working through each of these criteria with a focus on doing some writing around them, and then also having some discussion and feedback between the people in our groups to hopefully, you know, we're working towards 750 words. So I'm not sure that we'll get 750 words, but you should end up with some words on a piece of paper. And Alison and I would be thrilled if, following this, some people submitted these abstracts to BERA for the conference. That would be great. So what we now have is, I'm hoping it was the same in Alison's group, but we had some really good discussion around these themes. But we also found that, yes, there's only just enough time to get started with this project of writing the abstract. So we've now got about 15 minutes just to have some time to wrap up and have any reflections on perhaps the following topics of if anyone would like to share, you know, what's been useful. That would be interesting to know. But also it might be nice to hear a little bit about how people plan to, your next steps, how you plan to develop what you've started today. Or do you have any other concerns or worries about abstract writing, or questions that you might like to ask Alison and me at this point? So I'll put those questions in the chat, but it's very very much an open opportunity to have a few last reflections. And we could use the raise hand function if you would like to come in on your thoughts on any of these questions. What was useful? Next steps, or questions, worries, concerns? Yes, Marianne, yes.
So really, really useful. I think Amanda's put in the comments about, you know, breaking it down into those themes and the questions is really, really helpful for those of us who haven't done this very much yet. My concrete action, I'm ashamed to say, although maybe I shouldn't be ashamed, I should be loud and proud, I've written down, is that I was rejected for something for BERA for this year's annual conference. But I've already kind of seen that as a learning experience. But from tonight, it's to go back and look at the feedback I had and kind of hopefully understand it better now. That can be a really constructive thing for me to do. And yeah, I'm encouraged to keep going.
That's good. I'm pleased you're encouraged to keep going. You could also, I guess, have a look at some of the abstracts from this year's conference in your topic area and see if there's anything there that helps a little bit. But it's nice to hear that you have some concrete steps. Yeah, that's great. Anyone else got any planned next steps? Worries or concerns? Yes, Sarah.
Yes, I was just going to say, it's just interesting where you kind of pitch in terms of writing an abstract, in terms of where you are with your research, because obviously you have to do that quite a while before you know, an event takes place if you are successful. But what I was going to say, I found it particularly useful, even if you weren't successful or didn't do an abstract, with actually sharpening up your kind of own writing for your dissertation, because that kind of is aligned very much with some of the things that you kind of get a bit lost in the moment with. And I think it's been really useful just for sharpening up that, if nothing else comes of sort of submitting the abstracts. I mean, hopefully it will come, but I think it's been, you know, there's a lot of tangents, I think. So thank you, very useful.
Yeah, this is an interesting point. Alison, do you have any thoughts on at what stage it's good to start writing an abstract in a research project? Do you think it's good to do it near the start?
That's a good
As
question.
like a,
It depends what you're doing. There is no answer to that, Rebecca.
no,
Actually, because you write an abstract when you need to write an abstract, and I mean, if you're writing your doctorate, you don't write your abstract until you finish the whole thing. If you're writing for BERA, it's October now, and you have a look at your calendar and see, I think it's end of January that you have to submit for. And we were talking just at the end there about picking a piece of your research for your presentation, because there's so much in your piece of research, and it is the condensing of that, the refining of that, the crafting it down to this one abstract that is the important thing. And as I said at the beginning, it takes a while to write an abstract. So, you know, as soon as you've got time, you start putting thoughts together, and you don't leave it till the last minute, quite honestly.
yes, not leaving, that's good practice that I should probably work on as well. Oh yeah, Charlotte, did you want to come in?
I think to reiterate what's already been said, just a massive thank you, because it's been really informative in the approach. I think the thing that stood out to me perhaps the most was the use of the word craft, and Alison said it again just now, that this is a process that a person goes through, and to not necessarily expect it to come easily, that this is something that takes time. I think that's something I've struggled with, that the abstract should be this short little blurb, but actually it's a real piece of art almost.
It is.
In how
You're
that's
right.
pulled together. I must admit, in our room, I was astounded by how much my peers were able to write in less than 4 minutes, and I'm thinking, oh my life, I don't think that fast. But I think knowing that this is supposed to be something that you spend time and heart on was quite reassuring in itself. I don't feel stupid anymore. Probably the short version of that.
I mean, the thing is, you are condensing something right down. I mean, I suppose the analogy with an advert is quite interesting, actually, because you know, a slogan, the hook. You see a slogan, and the next day you go to the supermarket and you think, oh, I think I want that, and you don't really want it at all. But you know, because you've had this advert there, which has condensed the thing down into its most important points, you probably pick it off the shelf. Yeah.
Yes, I like the idea of it being a piece of art. And I also think that connects to, was it Sarah who said about it being very useful? If you don't think of it as something that you have to do to be accepted at a conference, but if you think of it as something that would also be useful for you to do to critically reflect on an aspect of your research, then maybe that's a more wholesome way of thinking about abstract writing that's quite nice. And there's also a few nice comments in the chat as well. Sylvia's put about there not being like a conference theme, that not writing to a theme was something that was concerning, but we've managed to sort of unpick writing to these criteria. And yes, Alison, your advice about not cutting and pasting, that's good advice. And Paula said about it being useful to discuss your research verbally, because that forces you to be clear and concise, which I think is also very true, but difficult at first, isn't it, to say what it is that you, in our group at the very end, we just had a bit where we all went round and said who the intended readers were, and we had so many intended readers between us, that was really nice, just to sort of pick out some specific people who might actually read or come to attend the conference. We do have about another couple of minutes left, so we don't need to stay longer if people don't have anything else to say, but does anyone else want to come in with any questions or next steps before we round up? I wouldn't want someone to feel they hadn't had a chance to ask a question that they really wanted to. No, that's fine. Well, in that case, I think that I would like to thank Alison in particular very much for coming along and sharing her expertise in abstract writing. But I'd also like to thank everyone, because speaking for my group, we had full participation and engagement from everyone, which was great, and I'm sure that was the same with Alison's group as well. So thank you very much for attending, and we really hope that you're going to take the next steps and develop some abstracts for the conference. And I also hope you might consider coming to another BERA event, and I'll get to know some of you further through those. Alison, any final words from you?
I just say, go for it. Have a go, and I should keep the attendance list, and I shall look at BERA next year to see how many of you actually got through. Actually, I better not do that, because if I'm reviewing yours, I better forget it, hadn't I? Yeah.
Oh, well, that's great. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Rebecca. Bye,
Bye
everyone.
for now.
Bye.